This is episode 5 of the Misanthropy podcast, and this probably isn't going to be that long because I'm super reluctant and nervous, honestly, to talk about any of this. This episode is going to be about, well, first of all, it's going to be a solo episode, the first one of the podcast, and I'm going to talk about self-deception. And in order to talk about that, I'm going to say some things about my life that I don't think that I've shared with anyone, really. Maybe like one or two people, and not everything. But anyway, self-deception. It's the lies that we tell ourselves, maybe to make ourselves feel better, maybe to ignore reality or a reality that we don't want to accept, maybe to protect our egos, or maybe even to survive a particularly tough situation. That's kind of how my self-deception got started. I grew up on the south side of Chicago in a place called Parkway Gardens. If you're from Chicago or the south side, you've probably heard of it. Not the greatest place. My mother was very protective of me, and that's understandable because there was very real danger to be protected from. So I wasn't really encouraged to go outside very much, and over the years, I learned how to retreat inside my mind, and there's good things about that. I'm really familiar with my thoughts. I can think critically. I can stand being alone. I can entertain myself. I did a lot of reading. But it did make me detach from reality in a way and started a pattern of like escapism that, I think a lot of people in my family will tell you if you ask them that for a long time, it always seemed like I was somewhere else mentally. And I still have a lot of those habits. It's because I was somewhere else. I didn't want to be around the things that were going on in that environment. So I did escape in my mind somewhere else. And it's very easy for me to get lost in my own thoughts and to be too focused on myself. It made me kind of an isolated kid. Not many people could bring me outside of myself, but it did give me a sort of focus. And, I was a smart kid growing up, and my family saw that. They saw intelligence, and I guess they thought that it was like something that would just propel me forward immediately through life. I don't know. That's probably not what they thought, but they would just constantly call me things like doctor or professor or future presidents and that president and that those were nice things to hear. But I heard them so much that I just started to assume that these were the things that I had to be or that I was expected to be, and it was such a stark contrast to what I was familiar with in my actual surroundings in Parkway. I had no real examples of actual people in these professions that people kept telling me that I was going to be. I didn't know anyone personally that were any of these things, and I had no idea what it meant to become something like that. I only saw what was around me. But I just really went along with everyone's projections and assumptions and expectations, and I don't really feel like anyone asked me what I was actually interested in, or that I should really be asking myself that. Well, like, what do you actually want to do? So when I look back on that, I feel like it actually detached me even more from reality, because subconsciously I never really wanted to do any of these things. I just went along with it because I thought that was what I was supposed to be doing. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be any of those things, but my point is that that's not what I wanted to do. It was just constantly being thrown at me, because I guess that's what you do when you're smart, I guess. I don't know. But eventually, I did get into a very good high school, St. Ignatius Jesuit High School. And around this time, I started to fall into like a really deep depression and lack of motivation for several reasons. I wasn't really happy with my living situation. I'm not going to go into that too much. The point in that mostly is to say that a lot of the depression came from not being satisfied with my life. And that's kind of a fucked up way to feel as a 13-year-old. And you know, a lot of the problems that I started running into, you know, I was so used to relying on my intelligence to solve all of my problems, and I quickly found out that it would only take me so far. And you know, I started to believe all those people along the way telling me that I was going to be all these things. And then I came face to face with the fact that I was lacking a lot of things, like will and purpose and work ethic. So, you know, that great opportunity in that school didn't work out for me. I was asked to leave, and I squandered a very good opportunity because I didn't really know what to do with it. In my next school, Urban Prep, I would meet people that I'm very thankful that I met. They provided me with some actual examples of, you know, how I should try to apply myself. They were kids that were in similar conditions that I came from. And you know, some of them had their own intentions and ideas. You know, at the age that we were, they had their own ideas of what their lives should be. You know, they were, you know, self-determining at a young age. Very artistic people, very musically inclined people. And it was here at Urban Prep, that I really started to believe that I could leave behind the idea of being some sort of academic or, you know, career student. And I started to explore my interests in art and music, which were always really there. I was drawing since I was a very small child. I was making drum patterns on loop machines as a young child. But you know, people would always say things like artists never made any money, or that I should aspire to be something else besides an entertainer, or, that there were more valuable things that I could put my time into. There just wasn't much encouragement for me in particular because of, I guess, the way people viewed me to go into that type of field. And to be fair, I didn't outwardly express that, but it was really because I didn't think that really matched up with what people expected from me, or it was something that I should just pursue on my own and not really mention it. But, because I was around people who were actually, seriously trying to pursue this in their life, it gave me the, a permission in a way to try and do it myself. And it was a great experience being there, and that helped a lot as far as me like trying to align what I wanted with what was actually, reality in my life. But I could only stay there so long, it being high school, and eventually, as much as my friends did inspire me to pursue my artistic goals, it was still a school, and I was still being pushed to, take that conventional college route. And I did end up going to Howard and Loyola, but like I said, because that's not really what I wanted to be doing, unfortunately, I did once again squander very good opportunities because I wasn't aligned with reality in my mind and the past in life that I was acting out. And I honestly really self-sabotaged and like ran out the clock on both of those opportunities because it's not really what I wanted. I was interested in anthropology, and I still am. It really is something that I do want to pursue, but I want to pursue it in my own way. And I don't feel like I really need a degree to accomplish any of the things that I want to do in my life. But that's kind of besides the point. After I stopped going to college, I feel like I went into the darkest part of my life. Any illusions of what I was told I should be as a child were shattered. And, as much as I didn't want to do them, it was a big part of my identity up until that point because of how much, I had gone along with it so up to that point. And I ended up living back at home with my mom in Waukegan. This was kind of the best way I could describe it is that it was a descent into the underworld, if I wanted to make a metaphor. I was resentful at life, at myself, and others. I started smoking a lot of weed, which isn't like a bad. There's ways where you could do that, obviously, and it's not a negative, but I was definitely using it once again to lie to myself and deceive myself and escape from reality. I was chasing the feeling of detachment that I'd been using to comfort myself from reality since I was a kid in Parkway, not wanting to be around what was happening there. I was having sex with random people and just generally making progressively worse decisions. It started to be a strain on my relationship with my mother because I didn't want her to find out about the mistakes I was making, so I was just being distant. And to her, I guess there was just no reason for me to be doing that. And I didn't have a lot of contact with my extended family because I was ashamed, honestly. I didn't want to be around anyone. And this continued for about a year until I started to just get fed up with how bad I let my existence become. I had to do some real mental maintenance, and uh, I didn't want to be a slave to my whims or instant gratification. Uh, I was being frivolous with money. And honestly, and this all came from me allowing myself to be controlled by thoughts that had come from years of bad habits, really. Uh, and I started just observing myself and just noticing when those things were happening, when those habits were coming up, the same cycles, the same patterns, rationalizing, procrastination, and I just really took the time to become familiar with the tricks that I played on myself. Um, I got more serious about my job, and that led to me eventually being able to get my own place, and that went well for a few months. I had to make some sacrifices and budget well, and things were going good, but you know, I let the patterns of the bad habits come back, and I started sleeping with prostitutes and spending a lot of my money on sex and weed. And I think this particular lapse in judgment and willpower came from me living alone and being able to hide my mistakes. I never stopped wanting to do better. It was just easy to keep doing what I had become used to. My job was extremely frustrating, so I would pretty much rationalize uh, giving in to my vices as like rewards for putting up with bullshit at my job. Like, oh, I had a bad day, so I should be able to enjoy my like self and do this, blah 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 blah. But I was fucking up, and you know, I still really, really, really badly wanted to do better, but I was letting myself slip, and my efforts were so split, and my mind was so split that I had what I could only describe as a mental breakdown. It was like my personality shattered because I was trying to move in two opposite directions. I couldn't look people in the eye. I was very erratic and snappy. Uh, it it was necessary. It was a solid rock bottom that I could build upward from. And I still struggled to stop making the same mistakes, but over time I got better at you know denying myself of the vices that I developed. And later that year, something really dramatic happened. My cousin Cedric was struck in a hit and run and killed, and this really was a smack in my face. His future got robbed from him. He was my age. He was 23 when he passed, and he was doing so much with his life. He graduated from college, which was a huge, huge, huge accomplishment, and I'm so proud of him. And he was really doing. He was living life the way that a man should. He was making the most of what he had, and he was going to serve as a police officer, and this made me feel a lot of guilt about how selfish I've been using my time, and it put a lot in perspective for me. And it was really a push for me to stop wasting time that he didn't have anymore, and I felt like I really owed it to him to get myself together and use my time better. So eventually I moved out of Waukegan. I'm still struggling with keeping up the better choices, and I've gotten a lot more serious about music, and I'm doing this podcast instead of just letting it be an idea that sounded good in my head, like a lot of people do with the ideas that they have. I've really just incrementally gotten better at not allowing myself to lie and be okay with mediocrity and with self-deception, and this is something that I feel like a lot of people deal with. Everyone really. It's just there's different extents to which people allow themselves to fall into that hole, and I'm actually really grateful for all the mistakes that I've made, because I am who I am right now, and I'm happy with what I've learned and what I can still do, and I'm not going to waste or squander any more opportunities. I've done enough of that. So thanks for listening. Like I said, this wasn't going to be that long. Most likely I will talk about things like this again, hopefully in a more refined way, in a more entertaining, funny way. I just felt the need to address these subjects and open up about mistakes that I've made, and maybe give someone else the permission to stop lying to themselves.